like this guy was like, hey, we did make ready. Well, make ready's in their book was a capital improvement. So this $200,000 on capital improvements was really more like $80,000 when we really dug into the numbers and saw what they did. So things that they were calling capital improvement, which by definition extends the life of the property, the life of the asset, they weren't capital improvements. Painting is not a capital improvement.
What would you categorize that as, Eli? Painting,
Painting is just an expense. I would expense that out.
repairs, and maintenance.
Yep. Make ready would always be repairs and maintenance. So the due diligence process, on our letter of intent, we wanted 30 days for due diligence period. We did a 60-day close. So we had 30 days of due diligence and 30 days for financing. And that's pretty common in the bigger space here to take longer. You know, it's not speed doesn't matter as much as making sure you got it right. So the due diligence process, you know, once we had the contract signed, the seller and the broker provided us their rent roll, their entire general ledger up to that date. We requested quite a few other items. They didn't provide everything we asked for, but they did provide the things that really matter, like the GL and the rent roll. So Jake and I both took a deep dive into that. Something else, anytime you guys are looking at apartment buildings or multifamily units, walk every unit. Do not skimp on that. You need to walk every unit. You need to put eyes on every room and every unit. For instance, I was working with another group that was looking at some apartments about 2 years ago. And when we walked every unit, we noticed in one of the four buildings that the foundation was actually rolling away from the building. And had you not walked the units and just kind of walked around outside, you never would have known that. And it really saved the butt on that group because they would have been in a lot of trouble. I think it was about a $400,000 repair, and they ended up walking away from that deal. So walking every unit, getting to know what the status is of every unit is super important to do. You have to know what you're buying. You have to know what kind of capital improvements you need to do once you buy it. That'll help you develop your price. We also took a 360 photo of every unit. So luckily Jake works at a real estate company, so they've got a 360 camera. So we went into every room and plopped that camera in the middle of the room, took a 360 photo. So we had a full view of every room of every property that we looked at that we could go back to and do an analysis after the fact.
Yeah, that part saved us quite a bit of time on the walkthroughs. We walked through all 34 units in a 3-day period. So it's quite a bit of work, but that saved us a lot of time because then on our own time, without the seller there or tenants there, we could go back, zoom in, look at stuff, kind of calculate what is this going to cost us to fix or renovate. I'll take over, Eli, so you can eat. Professional inspections. We really only did professional inspections on the ones we were going to sell. We wanted to do a pre-inspection. And actually, our initial thought was if we could get these contracts assigned before we even closed, that would have been ideal. That ended up not actually happening. We shot our to people we knew, and we shot our prices too high for a wholesale type of deal. Once we brought them to market, they were a little bit easier to sell. And then we just have connections to a couple roofers, and they did free roof inspections for us on everything. And like Eli mentioned earlier, once we went under contract, then we found out it was 92% occupied, not 100% occupied. And they were still marketing the vacant units, but we purposely did not want them to release the units. We didn't want them to lock up a lease under market value because they had a lot of this under market value rent rates. So we just said, don't lease. And seller agreed to not lease anything, just leave it vacant. And that gave us freedom and flexibility, especially on the apartments, to go in and renovate those vacant units and then bring it to market.
Now, to do that, we had to provide some non-refundable earnest money. So it wasn't like we could just walk away scot-free. So since we locked up these units so he couldn't resell, or release, you know, we were going to be money out of pocket if we didn't close. So we knew that going into this.